March 2012, a Texas Highway Patrol officer pulled over a car for going slightly over the speed limit. It was a completely routine stop, the kind that happens hundreds of times a day. But when they searched the vehicle, they found cash stained with dye from a bank robbery, a debit card belonging to an 18-year-old girl who had been missing for weeks, and her cell phone sitting right there in the car. The driver was a 34-year-old construction worker from Alaska named Israel Keys. And from that moment, investigators started pulling on a thread that just kept going and going. And the more it unraveled, the worse it got. Israel Keys grew up in rural Washington state, one of 10 kids raised in a pretty isolated environment, far from other people. He joined the army in 1998, got out in 2001, and eventually ended up in Anchorage, Alaska, where he ran a small construction business. By all accounts, he was quiet, got on fine with people, and was completely ordinary in every way that mattered. He had a daughter he looked after, a girlfriend, and did odd jobs and repairs for regular people around the neighborhood. One assistant U.S. attorney said later that a colleague had actually hired Keys to fix things around his house and given him a key so he could come and go while the family wasn't home. That's who Israel Keys seemed to be to the people around him. Someone totally normal. Someone you felt safe around. What none of those people knew was that Israel Keys had been committing crimes all over the United States for over a decade. Not spur-of-the-moment stuff. Not crimes where he just snapped one day. Carefully, almost obsessively planned crimes that he had been carrying out with a level of organization that genuinely stunned the investigators who eventually sat across from him and heard him describe it in detail. Here's how he did it. When Keys decided he wanted to kill someone, he would book a flight to a completely different city, rent a car, and then drive hundreds or sometimes thousands of miles away from where his flight had landed before doing anything at all. The gap between his flight records and where the crimes happened was completely deliberate because it meant there was nothing obvious to connect him to anything. He kept his phone switched off the whole time he was away. He paid cash for everything, so there was no card trail. And in certain locations around the country, years before he ever planned to use them, he had buried what he called kill kits. These were containers packed with weapons, zip ties, duct tape, shovels, rope, and chemicals to help him get rid of a body afterwards. He'd bury them, go home, live his normal life, and then fly back when he was ready to use them. He told investigators he had up to 12 of these buried across the country, in places including New York, Washington State, Wyoming, and Texas. The FBI believes some of them are still in the ground right now. In June 2011, Keys flew to Chicago, rented a car, and drove 1,000 miles to Essex, Vermont. He broke into the home of a married couple in their 50s named Bill and Lorraine Currier, used a kit he'd buried in that area 2 years earlier, and killed them both. Their bodies were never found. The case went cold with no leads, and nobody connected it to Keys for over a year, which was exactly what he'd planned for when he chose Vermont. Then, in February 2012, back home in Anchorage, he broke his own rule about not committing crimes close to home. Samantha Koenig was 18 and working the closing shift alone at a small drive-through coffee stand in Anchorage on the night of February 1st. Keys walked up to the window, forced his way inside, tied her up, and took her to a shed on his property that he'd already set up and soundproofed in advance. He'd thought through every detail beforehand. Samantha was killed that night. And then Keys left Anchorage the next day for a cruise he'd already booked. He just went on holiday, while Samantha's family were out of their minds looking for her, and her face was all over the local news. When he got back, he staged a photo of her holding a newspaper to make it look like she was still alive, and sent a ransom demand to her family. Her family and the police paid money into her account, hoping to track whoever was accessing it. Keyes started pulling cash out at ATMs as he drove south through the US, and investigators were tracking every single withdrawal in real time. When the card was used in Texas, they put out a lookout for his rental car. A few days later, he was pulled over in a car park in Lufkin, and the card and her phone were right there in the car with him. After his arrest, Keyes was taken back to Alaska, and the interviews started. And this is the part that's really hard to get your head around, because Keyes decided he wanted to talk. Not because he felt bad about anything. He told investigators this had been entertainment for him, that he enjoyed it and got a real rush from it, and that if he hadn't been caught, he would have kept going for as long as he could. He negotiated for Starbucks coffee, a specific cigar, and a Snickers bar before each interview session. Over about 40 hours of interviews, he admitted to 11 murders, though investigators think the real number is higher. Only 3 victims have ever been identified. He hinted at others but refused to give names or locations, using information like bargaining chips, giving a detail here, hinting at something there, then pulling back. He mentioned a victim in Washington state whose body he'd taken out on his boat and sunk in a lake. He talked about a woman he'd grabbed on the East Coast, buried near a kit site in New York, most likely a 48-year-old named Deborah Feldman, who had gone missing from New Jersey in 2009. When investigators showed Keyes her photo, he went quiet, stared at it, and said, "I don't want to talk about her yet." He never brought her up again. In December 2012, about 9 months after his arrest, Keyes killed himself in his jail cell. He'd hidden a razor blade in a pencil and used it to cut his wrists, then strangled himself with bedding. He left behind notes soaked in blood that contained nothing useful about his victims or where they could be found. Right to the very end, one last act of control. One last way of making sure nobody got anything from him that he hadn't chosen to give. The FBI still has the case open. They believe there are kill kits still buried somewhere in the US and have asked the public to contact them if anything turns up. They still don't know how many people Keyes actually killed. The people closest to him had no idea any of this was happening. His neighbor, his girlfriend, the guy who gave him a key to his house, none of them saw anything. He went on a cruise. He came home from trips and fixed people's kitchens, and nobody asked where he'd been. What do you think of this case? Comment below, and don't forget to like and subscribe while you're there.